This is the Hagmann and Hagmann report for today. It is a manic Monday. It is the 4th day of August, 2014 already. I'm Doug Hagmann, along with my son, Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann report. Folks, are about their 3 hours of unbiased, uncensored news, information, analysis, things that you need to know in these very perilous times. We are listening to the only show where the news is presented to you in 3D. We look well beyond the headlines and bylines and bring you the news beyond the news. And for the new listeners, thanks for checking in with us this weekend. There's a Ken in New South Wales, Australia. Hello to you. Mary from Alberta, Canada. Chuck, Jean, Robin, Mark, all from the wonderful state of Montana. Many, many more. Thanks for checking in. Folks, we broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. Our home base is HomelandSecurityUS.com. Our secondary program information outlet is HagmanandHagmann.com. That's HagmanandHagmann.com. Ladies and gentlemen, over the weekend, I did post the entire series of July shows to SoundCloud, which all the program descriptions are at HomelandSecurityUS.com. Also, the descriptions for each show for July. That's on SoundCloud, as well as the new heading. If you look at the main menu on our website, the program descriptions are there as well. Not 100%. There's a few days missing, however. We'll go back and fix those. But to the right of that, of course, different options to listen. And, of course, I want to thank the Christians United Broadcasting Network, CUBN. There you can listen to us live at the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.com. Thanks for joining us tonight. Thank you very much for your belief and your trust in us. And thanks for deliberately listening to this show and not tuning into other shows that run at the same time. Of course, thanks for downloading the show as well. We really appreciate that. We do our best to bring you the information that you hear about, don't necessarily get otherwise, and we dig deep into topics. I did write an article, folks, by the way. It's about Watergate 40 years ago this week.
I read that today.
Yeah, 40 years ago this week, Richard M. Nixon resigned as President of the United States, and interestingly, 3 articles of impeachment were also filed July 27th, 20th, and 29th of 1974, following a year's worth of hearings, televised hearings. I don't know how many people remember those, and I go into the history of that. But what is your breaking point? And of course, the 3 articles of impeachment had to do with lying and obstruction, basically, and not cooperating with a subpoena. And what do we see today? My goodness, we see far more than that. And we've got a do-nothing Congress. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. It just doesn't matter anymore. You have a do-nothing Congress. And at least back in the 70s, and I recall, my goodness, I recall people standing in the stores, those big, bulky console television sets with the stereo built into the side. Your grandmother had one of those, or maybe your mother, or maybe even you. But the fact is, stop on the sidewalk or in the stores and opportunistically watch the Watergate hearings during their lunch hour as they were progressing. And today, and of course, 15 years ago, we had Bill Clinton also impeached, but he survived that ordeal, never made it to the Senate, and of course it wouldn't have gone anywhere anyway because of partisan politics. But we've taken one giant step in this country to the left. Socialism, communism, that's what we've done. And contrary to popular belief, tyranny, there is a liberal fascism, and that's exactly what we are experiencing. Progressive, socialist, Democrat type fascism. Isn't it amazing that those people who protested the war in Iraq are silent, for example, on certain issues here domestically. Now, I'm not saying that they were right to protest the war in Iraq. I'm not saying they're wrong either. I'm just pointing out a fact here. I happened to be listening this weekend. I had to travel, a little bit of travel, and I happened to listen to some satellite radio in my stepson's vehicle, and I heard Patriot Radio News, and I thought, wow, I was listening to that and listening to how what they were saying, and I found it very interesting that even the Patriot Radio News wasn't as deep as I thought it was, or would be, or should be. And that's I don't mean to denigrate them at all. It was just an observation of mine. So anyway, I just want to mention too, folks, if you haven't already done so, definitely pre-order your book, 40 Things to Teach Your Children Before You Die. It's off of Amazon.com under Greg. That's Greg with 2 G's, Jackson. It's a fantastic book. That's Greg Jackson, 40 Things to Teach Your Children Before You Die. Available right now for pre-ordering. We'd like to get that sucker up to the New York Times bestseller list. The reason things happen when the numbers get to a certain point, they've got to respond in such a way. They've got the book companies and those who monitor the sales have got to do certain things, such as list your book in different places. If they don't want to list your book in, I didn't write the book. Greg Jackson did. I have nothing to do with I don't get anything financially out of this or anything. Joe and I, neither one of us do, nor does this program, nor do we want anything. But it's such a great biblically based book. It drives the socialist, democrat, progressive mindset. The people who don't believe in God, it drives them absolutely crazy. So so that's payment enough as far as I'm concerned. Joe, welcome to the studio, sir.
Great to be here. I want to thank all of you who sent me wonderful, kind responses to my appearance last night on the Dave Hodges show. We had a fantastic show, and Dave had a little bit of audio issues at the end, kind of what we deal with sometimes, but it was a fantastic show, and he invited me back on, and we're going to do it again soon, and that was a real treat. And we have a full week lined up for you guys today. Today, we're going to have in the third hour, Chuck Baldwin. Chuck Baldwin, many of you know him. He'll be on for the last hour. I wish we had more time with him, but we'll have to have him on again as he's somebody who has a lot of information, author of Romans 13. Tomorrow, Stan Dale will be back, and he will be on with us for 2 hours of the show as he just got back from Prophecy in the News Conference and doing his presentations on the Garden of Eden and on Solomon's Gold. So we're going to have an excellent conversation with Stan on Wednesday. Thursday, we have Timothy Alberino coming on solo. He came on with Steve last week. And then Friday, we're going to have Steve Quayle on. So we have a jam-packed week full of guests. We do have a guest for Wednesday, I believe, for half the show. We've got to get the name corrected before we make any announcements to that. But it's going to be a fantastic week.
That's my fault. Yeah, that's my fault. You were that was good with Dave Hodges last evening, Joe. Very good. Good response. Good, robust audience. Dave has a great show, by the way, the Common Sense Show. If you haven't heard it, it's on every Sunday night. We just have there's just so much right now in the threat theater, and I wonder how much of this is theater, folks. I really do. Any idea? What do you know? I wonder what your thoughts are. How much of what we're seeing is contrived? I think all of really, or most of what we're seeing is contrived in order to keep us in this state of fear and dependency upon the federal government in a big way. I've got to tell you. By the way, what could possibly go wrong with bringing 2 Ebola patients to the United States? I mean, my question is, what do you think there? Eileen Powell had done a very good column at CanadaFreePress.com. You can go there and read her column about the Ebola virus. It's a good historical backdrop for what we're facing. It's done with history in mind. So I would definitely take a look at that. And there's just so much going on right now, folks. It's every time you turn around, it seems as if we're getting hit again and again and again. What really bothers me is when we can't protect our southern border, or any border for that matter, when there's this intentional influx of illegals coming into our country.
I thought the border hasn't been more secure. It's more secure now than ever.
Yeah, that's what they say, right? That bothers me a whole lot, and I put the blame squarely on everybody attached. I even put the blame on governors as well. In fact, look, if I was the governor of a state and my state border was an international border, and there was an issue with respect to illegals crossing in through a very porous entryway, whether it's Texas or Arizona, you better well bet that I would have the National Guard, my National Guard, down there filling the holes, plugging the holes. Now, are they waiting perhaps to have private posses to do that? And if so, what would that look like? What would that look like to the average person, maybe from Chicago or New York or some other big city? Is that what they're waiting for us to do? Or are they setting us up? And think about that. Look, I'm for whatever protects us from the external threat. I am for that 100%. If it does take that, I'm for it. However, to understand, I think we all have to understand that it could get out of control really quick. Bad things can happen, and we might be playing into the hands of the enemy. Now, I'm not saying that to discourage anyone from doing that. That's not my intent. I'm saying is we have to be smart. We have to be more intelligent about things. We have to be intelligent about things in general and anticipate what they are thinking. But I certainly fault the governors if, in fact, they're not using the National Guard in the way that they should be using them in ample numbers, by the way, and in a fashion that would completely plug whatever hole is necessary. Not just window dressing, but business. So I think we're being played.
With that, we're going to bring on our guest for the first few hours of the show. This gentleman has been a guest on our show previously. Dr. Jim Garrow is his name. He is a ex-CIA operative with over 40 years' experience, a very well-respected activist, spent much of his life rescuing infant girls from China, babies who would likely be killed under the country's one-child policy, nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize for his work, and also came out and exposed the Obama litmus test determining who will stay and who will go with military leaders. Dr. Garrow, it's a pleasure to have you back on, and I'm just going to jump in and ask you a question. I saw from this headline yesterday, Army to force out 550 majors, some still active duty in Afghanistan. Is this still part of the litmus test we were seeing going on in the military?
I'm going to suggest it must be. What other cause would make him lose some of his best leaders?
Yeah.
I'm muted here. There we go. Yeah, thanks. I could hear myself on the other microphone. At what point, though, Jim, does at what point does this stop? In other words, this litmus test. At what point is it all over with?
It'll go on forever, as long as Obama needs to flex his muscles and ascertain who is in fact the loyal group that he can depend on and who are not, you'll keep seeing this. He will call the ranks, until all that's left are those people who will bow the knee to him and ignore what the Constitution and the rule of law suggest. It's not a suggestion, by the way, it's a demand on all of us. So, I mean, for him, it's about absolute control, and those who can't be controlled or will not be controlled by him directly and are more interested in serving we the people through, the demands of the Constitution and the rule of law, we'll keep seeing this.
Until such time as really there's nothing left, and that bothers me the most. I mean, when I say there's nothing left, there's no one left to protect us, we the people, and fight for what we're supposed to be fighting for and standing for what we're supposed to be standing for. I get that. But Jimmy, you made headlines. Now I'm going to kind of go off script here a little bit. You made headlines a while back, and I want to know if you were quoted out of context. Now I saw what you said about having intel, hard intel, or new intel, I should say, about the potential attacks to shopping malls. Can you get into that a little bit in terms of the development of that intelligence and how you came across that, how that was developed, and what that's all about?
Oh, absolutely. I received a message from a person I'd worked with over a number of years who indicated that they just got evidence that one of the five potential Osama bin Ladens that Mr. Obama released and assured us all that they would be going to Yemen. Do you remember that group?
You're talking about the not five Osama bin Ladens per se, but or in actuality, but the five terrorists or the handful of terrorists that were at Guantanamo. Is that correct?
That's correct. So there were five of them, and we were assured that they would be taken care of. In other words, they would go to Yemen, and they would be held in custody. Do you remember that promise?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And that was, yes, I do. Yep.
Okay. Well, this is where this whole thing starts, because facial recognition programs picked up one of these guys, the bomb maker and the teacher, the instructor for bomb making, who was one of those five, in San Antonio, Texas, in one of the malls. So that was red flagged and sent over to me. Remember, I don't work for any government agencies now. In fact, I guess I would be unemployed or self-employed now, dealing with my schools in China strictly. But there is a flow of information that's coming that is almost a deluge to me. And it's because people know that they can trust me. Over the years, I've proven myself. So for them, it's important to have somebody that they can bounce things off of and know that it'll get out to the public. So it was very important to me that I put it out to the public that, in fact, what is going on and what we know specifically is that they've been reconnoitering. They've been doing reconnaissance on malls. All of it adjunct to that experience they had in the attacks on the mall in Nairobi, Kenya, which was an American-style mall. And it took the troops 2 weeks to clear the insurgents, the terrorists, out. They were that well dug in. So this was all done on live television, believe it or not, because all of the cameras were recording what was going on. And so that was being fed directly to the terrorists and the people who backed them. So they knew exactly where they had been correct in what they did, where the attacks were coming in against them, and so they were able to hold off for 2 full weeks. So the people who are now coming across our border, because, of course, there's nothing stopping them coming across the border, now we have jihadis coming in. One of their tasks, and part of a very large group of people, is to prepare an attack, a simultaneous attack, on over 100 malls in America. Now, we're getting this because we have a list of the malls that they were actually looking at, they were studying. So is this a scary thing? I would suggest to you that I haven't heard of anything more scary than, 9/11 was pretty bad. But if you saw the carnage that could be wreaked in malls, and not only that, but the fact of being able to dig in, and it take weeks for America to clean it out, to clean each of these out, it would be an absolute nightmare and disaster all across the nation.
I got to tell you, Jim, and ladies and gentlemen, just permit me to relate this to you. Now, this is probably going back 10 years. It has to be about at least 10 years, if not longer. And you might ask yourself, a couple of weeks clearing out a mall, how can that possibly be? Well, about 10, 15 years ago, I don't know, it was in that time range, there was an individual that set off an alarm inside an Olive Garden here in my hometown. And it was actually somebody who had, there was somebody on the outside. This was at night. Somebody had actually seen a burglar. Somebody broke into the Olive Garden. And the Olive Garden was empty, by the way. Well, the police responded. They surrounded the Olive Garden. One, in fact, a good friend of mine took his vehicle and actually parked his car against the side door and had the Olive Garden surrounded for 3 days. It took them 2.5 days to attempt to locate this individual who was hiding in the ceiling. And I mean, he was all over the place. They brought in the dog. They did everything that they could, and it was. And I was looking at that, and I asked my buddy. I said, "How is this possible? I mean, you can't use some sort of smoke grenade device. Don't you have anything that you can use?" And he said, "Trust me, we're doing everything we can. It's surreal." And his car was actually parked there for I think a day and a half, and then they brought in some other device. But the bottom line is this: things like this can happen. In the real world, people can get dug into a location like a rat inside a very complex, intricate maze, and continue to pose a threat until such time as they're found. And of course, the option would be to smoke them out. Of course, that has property damage implications, and there are certain factors to take to consider. But the bottom line is, what you're saying is not out of the realm of possibility. But how reliable is that information, though? Do you think, Jim? I mean, you're talking about the 5 individuals. The handful of terrorists. The guy that was caught in San Antonio, was he shopping at the Gap, or was he actively, doing something, perhaps, surveillance or some other type of activity, engaged in some other type of activity that would cause him to be on the radar?
No, he was just caught on a regular camera. I think he was in a food court, if I heard properly. He was in the food court, but facial recognition programs that were activated, had already been activated, were obviously studying a number of malls. And bingo, this guy was targeted. He was it. It was recognized as one of a number that are in the computers. So it's not, beyond the pale for these sorts of devices to be able to do that and find him. But, keep in mind this. If it took 2 weeks and almost totally devastated the mall, by the way, in Nairobi, Kenya, can you imagine the devastation that would be wreaked if over 100 malls in America had a group of heavily armed and trained terrorists in them, slaughtering people first and foremost, then digging in and fighting this kind of a battle in the malls? I mean, the malls would be totally decimated, and there'd be huge loss of life. And, of course, these people are on a suicide mission.
Exactly.
And their intent is to create havoc.
Well, a couple of questions still in that theme. Why didn't they pick this idiot up back then when they had him on the when they had him identified? Why didn't they pick him up?
That's a great question. Obviously, they didn't. Because he's still out there. But so are others. And this is my concern is this. Mr. Obama tells us that he's doing things and that we should not worry, and that things are going to be taken care of, and that allies are going to be following through and doing things that he suggests. Like, for example, these people would go to Yemen. They would be held in Yemen for a year, and we wouldn't have to worry about them. In the meantime, a few months later, we have one right back on American soil in a mall doing reconnaissance in the mall. We have information that suggests that they are, in fact, getting ready as they pour across the border to attack 100 malls, over 100 malls, sorry. Now, where are the assurances from Mr. Obama? How reliable are they?
Interesting. All right, Jim. We have an intelligence insider as well named W. I'm going to bring him on for a second here. W, are you there?
I am. Hey, quick thought there, Jim. And I agree. We've been concerned about the threat to the malls, really going all the way back prior to 9/11, even with just kind of a threat, even going back to the first Gulf War. But it would seem to me that, especially with a very large, sophisticated attack against such a large number of malls, it would be planned over a much longer period of time. And even with a guy being seen on the video, it's not going to be a spur-of-the-moment thing. I would think, they're still 4 or 5 months out. And part of the reason that I would be concerned in that way is the Christmas shopping season, which is make it or break it for most of the stores in the country, for the box stores. So I actually have a date that I'll have Doug share with you off the air that is the date that I was advised of separately from even what you had said, and it's a November date, and at least have it in the back of your mind, because I think that makes more sense in an actual attack threat scenario as being the more likely real date, even if there's some reconnaissance taking place. Does that kind of seem like it makes sense to you, possibly?
Oh, absolutely. And I have not suggested a date at all, nor have I suggested that there's a plan in place for it to happen tomorrow or a month from now or whatever. What I'm giving to folks is just the bare bones of what I know, without drawing any conclusions beyond it. I'm not going anywhere but to the point of that, in fact, people who are not supposed to be in the country are in the country. We have a list that's been garnered in some fashion of over 100 identified malls, and we are now seeing them because I only mentioned the trigger, and the trigger was this gentleman who's supposed to be in Yemen being identified in the mall in San Antonio, but there are others who've been identified in the country. And given the fact that we have this porous southern border and jihadis that we know of pouring into the country, there's a lot afoot. But I agree with you that it's quite possible that months from now, that could be the target date.
Yeah, and I'll have Doug share that with you up here. I have a very hard date. There's a bunch of reasons for that, and I'm very concerned. But I think somewhere I had heard somebody suggesting that you had named a date or something, and I was a bit concerned about that. And I'm greatly relieved to hear that you hadn't, gone off the path too far in that way. And but I think we do have to be very aware this is a real threat. They know what their objective is, to target our ability to function in this American style of openness, and the malls is one of the most important, parts of that for our American style lifestyle.
No, absolutely, yeah, and they want to cause us to change our way of life because they have made us afraid, and that's part of the whole terrorism methodology is to do just that, create an environment of fear.
Yep. Hey, that's all I had, Jim. I appreciate you letting me just elbow in for a half second, and I'll have Doug forward that to you off air, and we'll talk some more.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, W. And yeah, Jim, that was our intelligence insider. We refer to him as W, of course. He does have some information that's very interesting. I'll have to get you this off air. But all right, continuing along these lines here. Look, however, we've got so many headlines coming at us fast and furious. We've got a serious situation with ISIS. We've got what I believe, and what you just mentioned, was the possibility of a military coup against Obama, the crisis in Ukraine, the rumblings in the Middle East, the increasing isolation of America from our allies, and so much more.
It just goes on and on. Can I jump in, though? You mentioned Ukraine, and let's talk about an obvious and incredible miscall, a miscue on the part of Obama. We know full well that as Putin was marching in to the Crimea, what he wanted to do was go in and throttle off the ability for the easy flow of natural gas to go to Europe, because that formed much of the overall supply to Europe came through the Crimea region. So he's now in charge of it. He now has his boot heel on it. What should have happened, and I've had a number of folks in the intelligence group say this to me, that in terms of strategy, the immediate response of Obama should have been a gathering of the natural gas suppliers of America in the Oval Office with instructions to them to stop the bleed off of 30% of the natural gas, which they bleed off into the atmosphere just naturally, and start storing it in those great big tankers in liquefied form, and send it over to Europe to undercut him and his ability to throttle and control the flow, and thereby the pricing, by the way, of natural gas for all of Europe. So he would not be able to hold hostage Europe. This would be a kind of a variation on what was done, the theme of the Berlin airlift. It would have been something very similar. But, of course, he either fumbled it because he knew about this. This advice was brought to him, and he didn't use it. And yet, it would have been the answer to the strutting of Mr. Putin, as if he had somehow managed a coup over America.
Interesting. Boy, the perception, of course, and I think, Jim, you probably have seen the PR pictures of Obama petting a leopard Obama petting a poodle and Putin petting a leopard side by side, and it's a PR campaign to elevate Putin well beyond anything that's reasonable. And it's a propaganda war as much as it is anything else. But with what you just said, could there be another reason why this didn't happen, as you described? Or do you think it was just a complete fumble, shall we say?
Well, what if it was deliberate? What if he knew full well that the strategy, and look, we war game things. We know that if this happens, this is the best thing that we could do in response to it. So do you not think that at some point in time someone has sat down and done an analysis of what our best option would be, should there be some sort of a throttling off, either through terrorists or a nation like Russia moving into the natural gas fields? Would it not be reasonable to have a plan, a contingency in place, or at least thinking in terms of a war game strategy? I think that would be the norm, and I think that's normally what we do. But what if we deliberately did not make a move that we knew would be the right move? And, just on the first blush, you know that what I've just presented to you was the right answer to what Putin was doing. You know that. And we've heard it from experts, far more expert than I am, because that's not my area. But running that up the flagpole and saying, wait a second, this is such an easy one. Why was this not done? And my answer to that is that it is not being done quite deliberately. And Mr. Obama is not facing people like you and I who were bringing this up and saying, Mr. Obama, why did you not do what would have been the easiest thing to do in response to this overreach by Mr. Putin? Why didn't you stymie him? Why didn't you parry the thrust that he attempted? Why didn't you safeguard Europe? And why didn't you build up the reputation of the United States as somebody, a nation that could be dominant over this kind of aggression? Why, Mr. Obama?
Good point. No one's asking these questions. Obviously, they're not allowed to, and we're not entitled to the answers. And Jim, I wrote an article that's on right now on the front page of CanadaFreePress.com as well as HomelandSecurityUS.com, comparing really America as it was back in the Watergate era, during the Watergate era, when journalists really pushed away from their desks and their royal typewriters and went out and did the hard jobs and did their jobs and held people accountable. And of course, I know it wasn't a perfect world back then either, but at least we had people asking questions, didn't we? It was a little bit of a different environment back then than it is.
And they were smart questions. They were aggressive questions. They were questions that they just couldn't duck, that they had to face.
Exactly. And see, we don't have that anymore. And, of course, we refer to our nation now as being a captured operation, and I think we are. And the news media, they're nothing more than the lapdogs for this particular renegade-in-chief, and I use that term deliberately, of course, renegade, referencing Obama's Secret Service code name. But the fact of the matter is, there's no one holding this tyrannical regime accountable for anything. And, we're at this point, who in the hell is going to do it? I mean, really, Jim, who's going to do it? I don't see anyone doing it.
Well, I see one person questioning effectively and doing it with such precision that everyone squirms the minute he opens his mouth. And you know who I'm talking about. He's got a bad haircut. That's the first hint. And his name isn't a regular name. It's not Tom, but it's Trey.
Well, do you put your yeah, I know who you're talking about. And of course, just to give you, he's a 49-year-old second-term congressman. I'll just tell you that right now, former federal prosecutor. Yeah, he's kind of a pit bull. I've heard. Do you know him at all? I mean, do you know him outside of? Do you know him well, or do you just know of him, or?
I know him, and that's all I can say. But beyond knowing, I respect him highly when I see him in the public view, and he is doing his job. Now, my question then becomes, seeing him do his job, what are the other people doing, and why are we paying them to do what they're not doing?
Well, yeah. Well, that's a good question. I'm glad I asked that of you, Jim.
That's what I like about your exchanges. It's always a tit for tat, and everyone can go at it. But, seriously, we're seeing a guy
Go ahead and answer your question. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead and answer your own question there, buddy.
Here we have Trey Gowdy, and he's obviously skillful at what he does, and he's also going to take no crap. You're not going to evade this guy. In fact, if you're not careful, he will maneuver you into the quicksand, and down you go in the mire. And you will look the fool as a result of your attempt to try and obfuscate with a guy like this. You don't do that. You answer his questions, and if you don't, he will make mincemeat of you. That's the kind of person we need representing we the people.
I totally agree. I totally agree with you on that. I do hope he's got somebody who starts his car for him, and he stays out of small aircraft.
Yeah, I hope
I'm serious.
I hope he doesn't go into bars and boast about the questioning that's going to happen the next day. Otherwise, someone's going to do a Breitbart or a Clancy on them.
You and I spoke. It was one of the programs that you were on. We spoke about Breitbart and Clancy, and I truly believe, based on everything I've heard, I'm not convinced, obviously, that either one was natural occurrences. And of course, you've got the wives who come out and say, "Oh no," and even Hastings' wife, his wife came out and said, "No, Michael Hastings, it was a tragic car accident and stuff." I've got to think that they're under some sort of pressure or threat themselves. I would have to think that. If you want.
Here, let me say this, that the best friend of Mrs. Breitbart phoned me and asked me, on behalf of Mrs. Breitbart, to stop saying that Andrew had been murdered. I said, I will, but hear me out. And I let her know what I knew, the information that was in hand, and where it came from. And I said, please present this to Mrs. Breitbart, because if she insists, yes, I want you to shut your mouth and not say this anymore, then I will. You'll never hear me say another word about it. And the next day, the friend phoned me back and said, after having, laid out my case to her, Mrs. Breitbart had said, tell the truth.
Really?
Yes.
It's the first time I heard that. If you told me that before, I apologize. It's the first time
I haven't said that to you. But you need to know it, that, my response would have been to Mrs. Breitbart, out of respect for her care and concern was about her children hearing this and it being false. But when she realized that this is in fact bona fide, that she did not want the truth to be withheld.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. My goodness. Okay. So much more. We touched on the Ukraine. How do you see things playing out in Ukraine right now? Since we're on that subject, or we were kind of on that subject, how do you see things playing out there? Do you see that as the tripwire for a global conflict, or do you see this thing kind of being, arranged behind the scenes? What are your sources telling you?
Well, I would suggest that it's a water test. It's testing the waters on the part of Putin to see what the response of America will be. Because it doesn't matter what anyone else says. It's what America says and does. And, of course, what happened? He saw Obama fumble. Or he saw Obama make good on his statement about needing flexibility. And the message that was sent through Medvedev to Putin that after the second election, he would have the flexibility he needed. Now, what was Obama referring to? Would it be, it would be the flexibility he would need in order to manipulate things so that Russia might have a better opportunity? Could that be it?
Better opportunity? Meaning?
Yeah. Like what was going on in Ukraine, in Crimea.
All right. So, in other words, we're actually playing for the same side. This is just a professional wrestling game where there are two opponents that are going thrashing at one another inside the ring. Yet, in the locker room, they're slapping each other's backs and perhaps even the wet towel routine. But
well, think about that open mic moment. What in the world was going on there? Where it was buddy-buddy, the President of the United States being buddy-buddy with the Prime Minister of Russia at that moment, and having assurances that messages are going to be delivered between the Prime Minister and the President to the President of Russia with assurances of something. Why is Obama assuring Putin of anything? And what's the message? Why the message? What did he mean about this whole need for flexibility? And what did that flexibility represent in terms of a promise made to Putin by Obama?
you reminded me of something here, and maybe you can shed some light on this, because I think this is in the same ballpark. And I don't know how many people remember this, but remember when Obama was a junior senator from Illinois, and he was on the disarmament committee for the United States with Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chairman Richard Lugar. And they were stopped at a base in Perm, Russia. That's where the mobile launch missiles were being destroyed by the non-Lugar program. This is back now. Oh my goodness, I'm trying to remember exactly what. I think it was back 2004, maybe 2005.
Mm-hmm.
But do you remember when Lugar and Obama were detained? Detained there in Perm, Russia, and Obama was separated from Lugar. Now, I'm going to say now this is back. I'll have to look at my notes as soon as I can find them. Back in August of 2005, they were detained for 3 hours at an airport in Perm, Russia, before being allowed to leave the country for Ukraine in a diplomatic incident there. They were kept there. Obama was separated. His passport was taken. Do you remember that?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Anything you could tell us about that little incident there that might shed some light on what current events today? You think?
No.
Is there a relationship?
Well, but let's think about it for a second. Why would there be a need to separate two people who were there on diplomatic mission? First of all, you don't detain people on diplomatic missions. You don't. But what if there was a need to separate Lugar from Barry, so that Barry could receive instructions, could hear a message, could have a conversation? Did he go into another room and then pick up the phone and suddenly there's whoever was in charge at that point in time, or needed to pass on a message? Why not?
Huh. Yeah, that situation always bothered me. And again, I don't have my notes on the exact dates, folks, on this, but I'm going to say it was August of 2005, and this is when Obama was still a junior senator. But don't forget too, and didn't you tell me? Weren't you were one of the people that told me, because I had this from multiple sources, that there was somebody from Russia who said, "I'll tell you who your next president is going to be. It's going to be a black guy named Obama." And this is before Obama was widely known. You're going back into the early 2000s now, right around maybe 02, 03, 04. And this was actually published, I believe it was, in the paper. Were you telling me that, or did I hear that from other sources? Okay.
Oh, that must have been someone else.
All right.
I wouldn't have that information.
Okay, but I just thought, when you look at Ukraine, and you make a good point about that, about his on the camera moment assuring Medved that he would have more flexibility to deal with the contentious issues like missile defense, or at least ostensibly that was the subject after the election. You gotta wonder exactly what that means. I mean, you gave a good summation of that, so pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. Where's your radar tuned to right now? Now, obviously, shopping malls, big issue, but we've been hearing about this since 9/11, and definitely one to keep an eye on. And like W said, I'm glad, because I saw your name associated with a date specific, and my goodness, you can't predict dates. Although what W was talking about is something totally different. I'll discuss with you a little off air. But
but you know full well that one of the methods in terms of disinformation, if somebody is close enough to the truth and telling the truth, you want to minimize the impact of that information and call into question the person. And so I've been under attack by different ones here and there, and that's fine. That's to be expected. But what we need to do is stand firm and say, here are the facts. We know this. And here's the message we need to bring based on the facts that we have observed. And that's the difference between, Joe Public and possibly someone like yourself with many sources, or someone like myself with sources and experience. We have a responsibility. There is no time frame on the oath. It doesn't stop because you got fired. You've still taken that oath. You still believe in that oath. You still believe in the nation. You still believe that loyalty leads to action when you know better. When you know something and you're not going to move, you're not willing to move, you're frozen or you're fearful or you're disloyal, then you're in a position of, in my mind, treasonous position. So what I will do with the information that I have is act on it. And that may be speaking to the issue in public. It may be breaking a piece of news that needs to be broken, information given to the public to safeguard them, or that oath that I took is meaningless, or that oath that I took has just been breached and broken by me, in which case I'm in a position of being a traitor. I won't find myself there, nor will I be cowed into submission by people who say, Carol's a nutcase, Carol's a fraud, Carol's... Yeah, I'm going on. It's pedal to the metal.
Well, if you know, obviously, if you know something, and it would save lives. I mean, folks, look, I think it was in 2005 when I really knew something was horribly wrong with the way things were going is when it was during the arrest of the surveillance of and subsequent arrest of the Lackawanna Six. The people, Jim, you remember the group, the so-called terrorist cell in Lackawanna, New York, which is a suburb of Buffalo, and they were planning all sorts of things, including going to the Galleria Mall in Buffalo it was on Independence Day. At least this is what the Lackawanna police chief heard from the FBI agent. I can verify this myself because I was told firsthand this. But the FBI agent said, look, we have them under surveillance. You cannot warn people. You can't say anything to your family. You can't, on and on and on. Let's just say that the word did get out, not to the public in general, but it got out to, the families of the officers working at the police department. Hey, don't go to the mall on the 4th of July. Don't stay away from the mall. In fact, it would be a good idea to stay away from the mall during that whole weekend. I think it was on the weekend at that time. So we know that these things go on, and there people are, in your case, ostensibly sworn to secrecy, right? I mean, you can't.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
But at what point, though? At what point do you say, wait a minute? I'm not gonna let the wholesale slaughter of millions take place because of a secrecy oath. I mean, and I'm asking you that question with due respect. I mean, at what point do you say, I can't let this happen?
Well, it becomes easy as the information comes forward because you have to make a moral choice. You have to decide ethically where, as you're pointing out, where is the line. When I was presented with the notion that there was a litmus test being asked of the military leadership, and I was asked to put it out to the public by somebody who, at that time, did not feel that they could do that, nor should they do that. And by the way, the man who opened that door and asked me to walk through it with him and put that information out was former Senator and Admiral Jeremiah Denton, who's an old friend. Now, he's gone. He's passed on, and that's why I'm using his name now. That was the deal. So there he is. He's asking me to get it out, get the word out, and that's what I did. So we talked about what Obama was doing in ascertaining where the loyalties of his senior military lay. And his response, of course, depending on the answer, was you either stayed or you were canned. You were basically forced out. And we've seen hundreds of senior military leaders being let go. We just got, as you mentioned, 550 majors are just let go. But there's purpose behind all of this. And our responsibility, I feel, those of us who've served the nation and would continue to serve the nation, whether we were paid for it or not, because we took this oath, our responsibility is to put the word out in such a way, that we don't break the oath, but we do protect the American public against wholesale slaughter on the one hand, or even misinformation. If I know that the president is lying, it's my responsibility to say to the public, the president is lying.
I agree. And I hope you would, regardless. Of course, anytime he moves his lips, in my view, he's lying. So it might be easier for you to tell us when he's telling us the truth. But in cases like this, no. I mean, certainly this is a big deal. It's a huge deal. How long ago was this litmus test developed? I mean, was it right after Obama became the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, or was it a year, 2 years, 5 years, what? How long?
You know, within his first week, he put someone on notice that they were going to be canned, someone very high up, within his first week.
Okay. How do you know to do that? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to overtalk you there.
No, that's all right. Finish what was your question?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Well, if I was in the realm, in the political arena as opposed to the military arena, and I rose to the level of president, I certainly wouldn't know. I mean, I'd have to have somebody advising me to do just that. Who advised him to get rid of that guy? I mean, who's his advisor to do that?
Well, if you look at the way things work in the Oval Office, or have in previous administrations, the best advice, the best developed scenarios, are brought to the president for his understanding. Choices are then made based on how he reacts or assimilates the information or judges the information brought to him, and then he develops, program and policy. Supposedly within law. But if, for example, one of the very first meetings with a general or an admiral is such that the admiral or the general is put in his place, as in, look, we won, you are now going to do as we tell you. So get this military crap out of your mind and realize that you serve us. Now, think about that. If you told the military, the leaders of the military, that they serve you as the president, that's what the S was about, as president, what would your reaction be? What do you think the leaders of our military, how they would react, other than shock?
Yeah. I mean, that's a rhetorical question, I take it. But yes.
Yeah, it is.
Shock
it is. But shock is the beginning, and of course, what if Obama overstepped his bounds in the very first meetings with military leaders, not understanding how protocol works or how things work in general? Like, how do you work with these people? So then you have Valerie Jarrett moving in and telling him to back off.
Yeah,
telling him to back off.
And many people say she's the power behind that administration and really runs the show.
Well, yeah, but wait a second. I thought Valerie Jarrett would be the one telling him to keep going.
But what if she recognizes the fact that you need the cooperation of the military and you don't want to stomp on their feet or insult them, bloody their noses right away? And so the best advice is back off, and then little meetings start to take place. Every opportunity that Valerie Jarrett has had to correct the wrong of Obama has entrenched her even further in the position of control, as in Rasputin, in controlling Obama himself.
The Night Stalker is, in fact, walking the halls of the White House. Interesting.
With that, Jim, we're going to go to the top of the hour break. When we come back, we got another full boat of questions. Gentlemen, to hour number 2 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this Monday, August 4th, 2014. Our very special guest, Dr. Jim Garrow. He's been making the rounds lately. as we get into some very heavy topics. Jim, I want to take us in the direction of the Middle East, from the Arab Spring uprising to the extermination of Christians in Mosul today. Where are we going to see this headed with the state of Christianity in the Middle East? And then how will that affect us here? And will we see what we're seeing in Mosul in America one day?
Wow. That's quite the bridge. Well, currently, as you know, there has been a very clear message sent by Mr. Obama to those in the Muslim Islamic ranks, the jihadis, first of all, that he will not stand on behalf of Christians. He will not do the things that have been done by previous leaders of the free world, and that is to provide a protective layer, a protective cloud around Christians in those Muslim nations. Now the cap of fear of reprisal from America and possibly their own governments has been lifted. They no longer fear what will happen because obviously Mr. Obama will do nothing by way of pressuring their governments, first of all, nor will he actually take action, physical action, against people who are slaughtering Christians. So it's a full-out war, jihad against Christians. They believe, of course, that everything that we have and hold is theirs and has been gifted by Allah to them. And so that's why they run amok and with alacrity steal everything and are shameless in their treatment of children, women, even men. And you know full well that some of the sickness you see is just horrific. But that's what happens when weak leadership is perceived to be in place in the White House. They know the difference between someone who will come to the rescue of Christians, either on the political scene first or militarily. And they know they have no problem. In fact, they have an ally with Mr. Obama. And so they fear not.
I want to ask you something, Jim. And again, this is off script. Not that we have a script, but this is just totally off the wall here. Obama's ring, does it say what it is purported to say? In other words, his wedding band, or what appears to be his wedding band, which supposedly predates his marriage, has some Arabic script on it that says something to the effect of something about Allah, and has some Arabic saying on it. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, it's true. It really is true. You've seen magnified pictures. You know, it's quite easily seen. It's quite easily read. Yeah, he doesn't wear it all the time, by the way, but you have seen it. It's been photographed, and we know full well that it is Arabic script, and it does mention Allah. Okay,
and what, when you say he doesn't wear it right away, I know these questions sound trivial compared to what we could be talking about, but I am kind of going somewhere with this in the larger sense elsewhere.
I had a feeling.
Okay. Why doesn't he wear it all the time?
I think there are significant days where you will see him wearing it, and others where he doesn't. But those, as to what days they might be, you need to do a little, just watch. Just, have a look to see when he's wearing it and when he's not.
Okay. Okay. And if folks, we can do the mental gymnastics on it, of course. A lot of times I really think that, are we, Jim, is the public just not paying attention, or is it something we just don't want to believe, or are we that dumbed down? And I'm asking you from a very serious point of view.
Well, and I'm going to give you a really serious answer. Frankly, we are so overwhelmed. We are so we're being treated like we are a nation of dolts, dummies. As it's in our face. It's constant. The disrespect shown to the American citizenry, politicians, anyone who is not in the camp of we won, we are being treated not as worthy any longer. It's as if because they won, because Obama won, he can now do whatever he wants. And, of course, we're seeing that full in our faces with respect to these executive orders and the ignoring of the Constitution and the rule of law. So all of this is a pattern on the part of somebody who feels he can get away with anything. He has his David Axelrod and his Valerie Jarrett, who over the course of time have backed him up, have backed other people into corners, have blackmailed and bribed. And these are the people who've done it. And they continue to do it. They now have hundreds of people working out of the West Wing and other buildings who now do nothing but analysis of people. Every single member of the House, the Senate, governors, houses within the states, they have the dirt on everyone, and they use it very much like the Nazis did. They use it with no thought for morality or consequences. Remember, it's the fool that has said in his heart, there is no God. And Obama acts as if he answers not, A, to the public, but also, B, to God. And when I say God, I mean the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of America, the God whose promises were believed by the founders, and who promised, the founders promised God that they would honor him in what they put together in terms of the nation. That's why the language is as it is, where it is always showing what God has gifted us. These inalienable rights come from him.
Thank you for saying that, Jim, by the way, and that's a heartfelt thank you for pointing that out, because a lot of people don't make that connection, or they refuse to make that connection, but you're exactly correct. Was George Bush this way in terms of using... When I was researching the Watergate information, I had really no idea how deep that went, the enemies list, the real enemies list, and then, of course, it extended into the Clinton administration. But have all the administrations been this bad?
I'm going to suggest no, nowhere near as bad. It's one thing for you and I. We do an assessment of friends, who of people we know, who would react positively for us, we could count on, who would react negatively if certain things came forward. So that would be a normal thing, just in the plotting and planning of who you could depend on, who you would want to bring into your administration if you and I were running the place. You would do a very concrete analysis of who ends up on the right side of the list and who ends up on the other side of the list. We would just do that. That would be the norm. So saying that normal process of gauging and judging who's who is somehow the creation of an enemies list, well, it may look like that, but it's only people who actually enunciate that, like Valerie Jarrett, who says, if you're not for us, then you are the enemy, and we will get you. Payback time. Let's not forget that. Payback from these folks goes all the way to death, and the body count is there. So, this is well beyond the norm.
How the heck did I do that? I'm sorry, folks. I keep hitting this button. I got to move this button here. Since you know all the players, I just totally lost my train of thought. Thanks, Joe. Where was I going with this? Jim, I don't know. Let me just do a 180 here and let's just talk about what you know to be the threat at this point that's out there. I mean,
you were on Dave Hodges a week ago Sunday. Dave had some interesting information about naval war drills being conducted for the last 5 years off the coast.
Thank you.
EMP threats happening. What's your take on the information coming out from Mr. Hodges?
Well, let's go back. Let's go back to October of 2013. when in fact Obama did give orders that would have seen the movement of nuclear devices and the pre-positioning of these nuclear warheads on missiles that only had an 800-mile range, resulting in one admiral and two generals, an Army and a Navy, Army and Air Force generals, and the Navy admiral realizing once they put the information together that something was way out of whack, and then refusing. One of the actual devices was taken 560 miles southeast of Charleston, South Carolina, and exploded in the deep ocean. Two people brought it forward to the public. I was one. The other was Vladimir Putin of Russia, who stated very clearly that the assessment of the U.S. Geological Survey that a seismic event had taken place in that position, 560 miles southeast of Charleston, South Carolina, was in fact in error, and he declared that what is going on? America has just detonated a nuclear device. What is going on in America? He asked the question, put it out there to Europe. Some of the papers in Europe picked that up. But in America, what happened? Fizzle. I appeared on a few shows, continued to speak the truth. But here was Obama moving forward with an agenda that would have taken out 90% of the American population in a period of 2 years. 300 million of the 330 million Americans would have been lost. Now that falls into the area where people talk about Agenda 21 from the United Nations, the massive depopulation of the earth. And that fits with the numbers that were suggested for a reduction of America as a population. So, whether you want to make that connection or not, whether it's happenstance or not, the fact is that there was an attempt. It was stopped by three heroes, two admirals, yay Air Force, yay Army, and yay Navy, who stopped what could have been an absolute disaster. That would have been an end of our civilization in America. That would have been it. And the elites, of course, having taken care of themselves, having pre-planned for survival, would have survived. In the meantime, it would have been wholesale slaughter of the majority of Americans. That has not gone out to the degree that it should have. But we know what we're dealing with when we're dealing with Mr. Obama. There are no happenstances. And when these people pull the strings, they're pulling strings that have everything to do with loyalty. And with Mr. Obama, the loyalty is to Allah and Islam first.
Can you be any less direct than that? And you're right. That is the pecking order, the allegiance, of course. And this sounds like such an academic question, Jim. But how in the world? Why isn't George Bush, for example, George W. Bush, for one, as an ex-president, despite decorum, jumping up and down and saying, "Wait a minute," or Bill Clinton, "Wait a minute. Look, this goes well beyond politics. This is not politics. I mean, this is not a political objection. This is an objection. I don't want to see my country destroyed." Why are they so silent over this? And it might sound like a stupid question, because to me, if they're not jumping up and down yelling about this, then they're complicit in it. Is that simply the answer?
I'm going to suggest that George W. Bush is not complicit in it. He may be, the lesser of, in our eyes, in reputation, as a result of some of the things he did or some of the ways he did things. But one thing he is a patriot. He is also a Christian, and he's come through experiences in his life that have made him rely on the bedrock of God and put his faith right there. So I look at George W. Bush a little differently than others. Mr. Carter, he's a whole other kettle of fish. Mr. Clinton, Any man who would break his oath of marriage is not a man to be trusted. So we're dealing with different characters, and these characters are based in, their position before God. A man who's had his sins forgiven and knows whereof his salvation comes is a different man than a man who believes that there is no God, or a man that believes that, I can play my way through life and, there are no consequences worth worrying about. And then there's just people who just haven't got a clue.
Okay, I'll take you at that. I'll take that answer simply because we could talk all day on. We can go in different directions on that, but I accept your answer as it is there because you are correct when you say that there are two different mindsets here, and folks. Again, our program is not 24 hours long because we could talk for the next 24 hours about this. So, but very interesting answer. But still, I would still think that, if I was George W. Bush or in that position of being an ex-president, Christian that I am, I would be just screaming at the top of my lungs saying, please, look what you're doing. And I know that there's decorum there. There's a level of you don't.
Can I suggest this? That I know that Mr. Carter, I know that H.W. Bush, and I know that W, and I know that Clinton have all approached Mr. Obama and questioned him and asked for a change of direction. All of them have. All of them have shown their concern. None of them have been silent. None of them have sat back. And even with the response, which has not been nice, even with that response, they've still made the attempt. When they see him taking America in the wrong direction or making boneheaded decisions, they have stepped forward. But here's the problem. Mr. Obama is an isolate. He's a singularity. He has moved instead of this notion that there is wisdom to be gained from seeking the counsel of those who've been in the presidential position in years past. Each of the previous presidents have learned much. I have networks of people all across the world that Obama, does not have at his beck and call. But by calling on these other presidents, he can access so much more than he himself can normally. But he has chosen to shut the door on them. He has chosen to ignore those many years of experience. And sadly, we see almost silliness in what he's doing in the White House. For sure, we're seeing treasonous activity. It's a sad. We're in sad shape, gang. We really are.
I've got a question from Kathy.
And I have one when you're done.
Okay, Sioux Falls. That's in Idaho, right? Sioux Falls. Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
All right.
Sioux Falls, Iowa.
Iowa. Okay. Wow. Need the glasses yet again. Yeah. Here's Kathy's question. Kathy, sorry about screwing up your state, or relocating you. Probably don't appreciate that. Mr. Garrow, this is for you. Kathy wants to know about your take on the Ebola threat. Is this something we should be concerned about? Is the threat coming, or why were the two people brought into the United States with Ebola? Should our eyes be on those two people or elsewhere with regard to the Ebola virus?
Really good question. Let me suggest that the pattern of behavior on the part of the nation in the past, in terms of gathering information to ascertain whether something is a threat, a global threat. Now, I happen to know this because I was there working for our government. But remember when SARS took place? SARS?
I do.
SARS came out of Princess Elizabeth Hospital on Waterloo Street in Kowloon in Hong Kong. If you remember, that's where the epidemic started. And I was assigned to go next door, take a room in the International House, YMCA International House, right next door, and then go and interview the doctors with respect to what they felt was going on. Was this a terrorist attack? Believe it or not, that was the belief back then, because we're going way, way back. That's like 2002 or 3. I can't remember the exact year, but that was the case. So we had boots on the ground right there, talking with the people face to face right away. I just happened to be one of a group of people, actually. But here and now, we should be doing the same thing. You gather your information first, and you do it at arm's length. For example, you don't bring an epidemic into your nation so that you can study it. You send your teams to where it's at to study it. You don't enable the disease to spread within your own nation. So I question the wisdom of what has just been done. Is it a possible horrid thing for the entire world? Absolutely. But you don't have to fall prey to it by making stupid moves.
Boy, I agree with you there. I don't understand what I'm seeing, Jim. I really don't. And ladies and gentlemen, I question the what were they thinking? And as I was somewhat joking around, what possibly can go wrong? My goodness, However, we have a threat. Well, to expand upon this, by the way, I've got a couple other emailers that have the same line of questioning here. To expand on the virus threat, what are we seeing coming across the southern border, and isn't our exposure there much more severe, than bringing in, we'll say, although that was a questionable move, bringing in isolation to a level 2 containment facility? But what about those people coming across the border? Or do you believe that they're peppered in there, perhaps with the intent to start an epidemic?
Well, wouldn't that be hideous and horrible if that was the case? Can I lay that at the feet of Obama? I wouldn't put anything past him. Do I trust Mr. Obama? No, not as far as I can throw him. So anything that will disrupt, anything that will cause the government to be able to be more powerful, to just assert more power over the people, he will move in that direction. And the man has no morals, no scruples. You see him lie constantly, so you know he has no notion of what truth is. He will use it. No matter what it is, he will use it to empower himself.
The question I have, Jim, is about the next presidential election. If there was going to be a Republican candidate that would win the election, we'll say, who would your choice be right now, seeing the field of people that are out there?
You mean the field of people who've given a notion that they're interested?
Well, I guess anybody. If we could have if you could have your ideal Republican nominee be elected in as president, who would that be?
He doesn't exist today.
Interesting.
It's a great answer.
And on the Democrat side, I'm assuming the same?
Yes. By a long shot.
Yeah, there seems to be a group of people out there that think another election, with the right Republican candidate, whether it be Rand Paul or somebody else, could change things around. But I just don't see that at all. Everything would continue, in my opinion, the way it is, and I don't see a political solution to the situation. Sure. Yeah,
absolutely. Can I suggest something? If I saw, now I don't want to sound communistic here, but understand where I'm going. If I saw more groupthink, if I saw more collaboration, if I saw more consultation, if I saw more of a group of people recognizing talents and abilities on the part of others who could work as a group towards some goals, then I would have a lot of hope. I'm seeing a little bit of it here and there, but keep in mind, the guy who's standing out by himself, waving the flag, yelling, screaming, and doing whatever, is not the guy that I want to look at. It's the guy who, in a committee, is working away so that the group succeeds, so that the goals of the overall group are met. That's the guy that I want to get a hold of. That's the guy I want to hold his arm up and say, hey, here's the guy. He can make this group work together. Ronald Reagan was an excellent guy of all things, an actor. Can you imagine? Of all things, he was great at recognizing talent, bringing it together, and then allowing them the latitude to make it happen. He would be there, as a guiding, like a rudder, guiding the ship. But those guys are the guys, pulling the oars. It's the other guys, and they would do it out of loyalty to him, loyalty to the nation. But show me the guy who can bring a group of people together and cause them to gear down and use their immense talents to the benefit of the goals that you set for them, and set great goals, aspire to great things. I mean, that was the method of Ronald Reagan.
Interesting observation. And I agree with you on many levels with what you just said. Yes, I have to agree with you on that. Bill writes the following, Jim. He does find you very fascinating, and he admires you for your work, for your foundation work. Bill has lived in China, I shouldn't say has. Bill lived in China for 8 years, spent a lot of time in Asia over the last 40 years. And that, of course, has given Bill, in his email here as he writes to me, a greater understanding for the reach of the CIA. Now, with respect to you, he writes that you obviously have excellent contacts with the Chinese government. Your business relationships point to this, Bill writes. It seems clear that the Chinese government is fully aware of your intelligence connections. How has all of this played out over the years? On the surface, he writes, it seems a bit strange. How would you address that?
I love the word strange. Yeah, I would use stronger words. But think of it this way. I acknowledge God as my sovereign. So I turn the results of everything that I do over to him. I believe that his wisdom will take us on a path that goes way beyond anything we could ever ask or think. He knows the end from the beginning. So, I don't want to turn this into a religious argument or a statement, but you have to understand the context within which I work and in which I think. So my faith life directs everything by way of expectation that I have. And as a result, when I'm dealing with the Chinese, for example, I'm thinking, how can I make them better? Now, it may sound funny to say that, but how can I enhance things, whether it's the educational experience of one of the children or whether it's people I'm dealing with in the street? How do I represent my God, first and foremost, so that someone's going to finally ask the question, why are you so different? What makes you so different? If they're asking me that question, I have full license to give them an answer. And, that's the other, and this Bill will know. You wait for them to ask the question, and then you do have the right to answer it. And if that's talking of salvation or whatever it is, your belief system is, whatever makes you tick, you got it. You got the door open. So that's the beginning of where I am with the Chinese. But I have also helped to safeguard the Chinese leadership with respect to what happened with Bo Xilai and his wife. And Bo Xilai was, we knew this. We picked up on this, by the way, because of a student. Believe it or not, it came out of a student's mouth to us about what was going on with Bo Xilai. That's a whole other story. But he was about to do. He was listening in on the lines, the telephone lines, in the homes of the leadership of the Communist Party Central Committee, and also the Central Committee offices. That's precursory to a coup, and that's where this man was going. He ended up murdering one of my teachers, but anyway, we helped to take him down. And so there's an understanding on the part of Chinese leadership that, I'm concerned about China because I love China. China's a wonderful place. There are wonderful people. I love America. I love Canada. I mean, these are wonderful nations. I will do what I can to safeguard any of them. And I think there's some recognition there of that. So how can I get away with the strange things that are done and have happened around me? God is in control, and He allows it to happen.
Yeah. And it happens for the most part for our benefit, whether we think so in the middle of that situation or not. But it always does work out. We have a question about Canada while you brought up the country. This one from Annie. She asks, Joe, could you please ask Jim how Canada fits in with our all-around U.S.-centric info? And I think she means, what's Canada going to be like if America goes under?
Well, Canada, we're kind of tied at the hip. Each one benefits from the greatest trade relationship on the planet. It's an immense relationship, and if nothing else, Canada sits on some of the greatest natural resources on the planet, we have a great and honorable relationship of trust that's gone on for a long time. Canada has a wonderful prime minister now. I've had breakfast with him. I've gotten to know him, his family, a wonderful Christian gentleman, and a smart dude, by the way, a very smart man. Wrote the policies for an entire political move that we were kind of behind. That's a whole other story as well. Yeah, Canada has a good place alongside America as a partner, and I think it's something we should protect.
So you broke bread with Stephen Harper and his family? Is that what you're saying?
I missed that. Sorry, there was a blank.
Yeah, it's probably my blank. You broke bread with Stephen Harper and his family of Canada?
I've had breakfast with Stephen himself in a restaurant just across from the Capitol monument in his early days, and when I was up to something, he and I had a great exchange. Yeah.
Very good. Zach wants to know. Zach lives in San Antonio, and I don't blame him for asking this question. I don't know if you can answer it.
Can't tell you which.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. There you go, Zach. Jim knew where you were headed with that. Yeah, and understand, folks. Malls, any public place, it's consider yourself under surveillance, and there is facial recognition software in place everywhere. My goodness. Okay, boy, Jim, I got to tell you, there's like 100 questions here that will go unanswered, and I apologize to the people for this. There's just not enough time. The economic situation. How do you see the economic situation playing out here? We know. I mean, look at Argentina. Look at what's taking place all across the globe. Any thoughts specifically to the economy, global and otherwise, global and domestic?
Well, Barry Soetoro, Barack Obama, whoever he is, or all of the above, Harrison J. Benio, or all of the above, what he's doing in terms of the wild spending spree that he's on, the empowering and enabling and enriching of his buddies. I mean, this is just craziness, all at our expense. The lack of trust that's now out there on the economic sphere because of what he's doing. Prior to this, there's been people have held things in check. He's not holding anything in check, and there's nervousness all across the world because of what he's doing, his actions on the economic front. Could there be a huge adjustment? Could there be another, crash of the economy? Yeah, there really could be. And it would make, the 2008, the 2001, it would make all those, look minor. The great crash early on in the 1900s, it could be worse.
It definitely, in my view, it'll definitely be worse than the crash of 29, and of course it extended. Really, it didn't affect us until the early 30s, really in the stranglehold, and it just took a while to ripple effect. But I have a feeling that the next one is going just to be when the dollar collapses, and it's already lost 98% of its value. But I believe when they take it out as a world's reserve currency as a petrodollar, I believe that. Jim, I just think that at that point, misery will abound, and of course we will be in such a desperate place that we're not even going to be able to think straight unless, of course, we have the armor of God on, and even then, it's going to be a very rough road. But that's just my thought. What's on your specific radar what troubles you the most? I've got about 5 or 6 different questions that are variations of that question. What troubles you the most? What keeps you awake at night, Jim Carroll?
Well, the knowledge that we have a president of the United States who is acting as an agent for another government. That troubles me the most. That needs to be rectified. That needs to be ended. Because we know that the loyalties are not, and as a result, from loyalty comes action. So the actions we see are not in the best interests of America, but they certainly are in the best interests of those who are Islamic. So the fact that we know him to be an agent of Saudi Arabia should that not trouble everyone? If you knew that,
yeah,
you would lose sleep at night. So you asked me a good question. What causes me to lose sleep? It's the knowledge that we have a usurper, an agent for Saudi Arabia in place. There were 8 possible Obamas, and 7 of them, the other 7 are dead, but they were groomed. They were funded by Saudi Arabia. The fact that his records have been sealed, and for good reason, he never passed out of Occidental as he should have, would never have made it into Colombia as he should have, and every other citizen has to meet certain benchmarks. But you see, money was made available to Colombia and Occidental through Saudi Arabia. Money was made available to Harvard through Saudi Arabia. Why? To enhance the opportunities for Obama, knowing full well that what they were doing is paving the way for their agent to move into some position. Again, there were 7 others, all having the same experience, great backstories or made up, fictional backstories that fit what the American people needed by way of dream. But that's what keeps me awake. And that's what I speak to all the time. It doesn't matter. I'll meet with somebody for coffee, even if I've driven 1,000 miles. And if I can have an impact that suggests to somebody that, we really need to fight what is going on in the country, then I'll do it.
Amen, brother. Okay, that's a very good answer. And I totally agree. Something you just said, I had a conversation with somebody from Chicago here not too long ago, and the conversation was actually a series of conversations, but the bottom line is this. What we're seeing in the White House, this is from this source now, and I'd like to get your reaction to this. very, very similar to what you just said. Barack Hussein Obama is really a fictional character. When I say fictional, he's a composite, or it was made up, I should say. His mother may not be his mother, as he states. His father, of course, is unknown. Many possibilities there. But the fact is, Obama himself might not know even who he is, really, truly is. But what got me was this source stating, look, there were others, many others, several others, that had the same background, legend, whatever. They were creations that were, were part of, that could have taken this position as president. As crazy as that sounds, there were others that could have, as you said, could have stood in Obama's place, but Obama was selected earlier on, and the others were not, for various reasons. So it dovetails with what you said as far as who this guy is.
Mm-hmm. Well, we know that the intelligence communities around the world laugh at us now when they see what they believe is our ineptitude in not dealing with the facts, which they have. Their files on him are replete with the horror, really, of how this came about and who he really is. And no wonder they're laughing. They see, how badly conned, how we've been had, how we've been duped, and we continue to be. I mean, can you imagine? Every time he gets up and speaks as president, they're laughing. And I mean, Putin, for him to put out, if it was him or his agents, to put out that picture of him stroking, a representation of real ferocious, an animal, a real animal, versus, our guy stroking a poodle. Ridiculous, but telling about...
Very much.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, too, about Obama and this nuclear debacle back in October. I think we talked about this before. October, we suspect, or we've been told, or there's been intelligence. You touched on this, that there was a detonation of a nuclear device, a deep sea ocean detonation. 2 other devices went missing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, remember that conversation. Supposedly, Putin came out and confirmed it, and of course, Obama breached so many protocols with respect to handling of the weapons and so on. But you find it interesting, as we sit here today, the talk about us, the mainstream media warning us about an EMP, perhaps, or some type of a catastrophic event mimicking or mirroring an EMP taking place. If you want to weigh in on that, your thoughts.
Well, considering we warned the nation that it had the attempt had been made to have that come to fruition, we talked about it, absolutely. And now you see people talking about EMPs all over the place. We knew that he was timing it, by the way, with the 11-year cycle of the sun as it switched polarity, which creates massive solar storms and huge, energy bursts of the EMP style. So we would have had this thing washing over Earth at the same time as he was trying to detonate nuclear devices to create EMP in the upper atmosphere. So, I mean, the devastation and the intent is horrific when you think about it. And now we're talking about it, and all over the press they talk about EMPs, right? But is that not an indicator that, the disinformation follow-up is to make sure that everyone's talking about EMPs? After all, just kind of normal, eh?
Yeah. And think about the devastation, folks. If you haven't read 1 second after. Hey, you can even listen to it via audible.com off of our website. Click on the link and it'll take you to Audible. You can sign up, get free months, and of course that book too. You can listen to that book. But that would be the ultimate depopulation device, or that and of course combined with the virus threat we've got with Ebola and others. Indeed. In the waiting moments we have left here, Jim, just take it. I mean, go where you want to go, what you want people to know. We've got a very robust listening audience this evening all over the world. What do you want to tell people? Perhaps that you haven't said, or if you want to reinforce something that you have, just go ahead and do so.
Well, I want to give people hope because, in spite of what we've just talked about, which is pretty horrific, the devastation of 90% or the death of 90% of the population, that is, what a horrid thought. But let's focus in on what's going on and where things could go. Keep in mind that the foundation of the country is based in Scripture. So that's a bedrock. And that's a promise between the Founding Fathers and God. And God has always honored his promises. They claimed the promises of God. They gave him the credit for everything, including, even the notions, the inspiration to write what they wrote. And even in when there were huge differences between the players, what would they do? They would seek God's face in prayer, knowing that he could give them wisdom to surmount any difficulties, any differences that would hold things back, because they had that goal of the creation of a nation that would honor him. And he has honored that over centuries. So where we are today is someone has brought forward another God and presented it and obeyed it rather than the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And it's in that. God is a jealous God. He remembers the promises that were made. And so, to some degree, he's turning his back on this change, because this change is a slap in his face. So, I'm waxing into the area of religiosity or faith. But that is the very area from which all of the thinking that created the good stuff, the Constitution, the rule of law, the Declaration of Independence itself, these were inspired words acknowledged by them as having come from a beneficent God who would give them the wisdom to do just what they did. And they acknowledged that without him, they wouldn't be able to pull it off. And even when they argued, they knew that only in him could they be brought together and make it work. So we need to return to that. We need to acknowledge the fact that it is God and God alone. And again, I've got to say it, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who will ultimately continue his blessings and pour them out on America or withhold them. The wisdom that we need to get through the current situations. And I guess we also need to call on him to stop Mr. Obama and to stop Mr. Obama's honoring of Allah above the God we know to be the true God. So we need to call on him. So in closing moments, that would be my summary.
Very eloquently said, sir. Very eloquently said indeed.
Yeah, and you share the same sentiments as I do. Is that it's gonna take a nation to turn back to its spiritual foundation, its a Christian foundation, turn back to the Father and Lord and repent for what we've done and ask him to move us forward from here. Otherwise, we're going to be working against the current, and things are going to continue to spiral out of control as they have now, to the point of no return. And we're seeing that in real time now, and we can see how bad that might get. And people need to ask themselves, is this the way we want to continue, or do we want to change things for the better?
Mm-hmm. Amen, Joe. Amen.
Okay, hold on just 1 second here. I've got... I need to ask you this question, Jim. I apologize. Do you have anything today? And folks, you've heard me talk about this before, and in fact, I've talked about this information. Frankly, I didn't know about this prior to my conversations with the Intelligence Insider. You folks know as the initial W, but do you have anything today on K129 and the rogue element that would have made? Do you know anything about the K129 situation back on March 8th, 1968? The Gulf II sub from Russia.
Isn't that an interesting one? Wow. I have the feeling I read a certain document or report that someone else did, which means I can say nothing.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm not bound by any secrecy oaths. Okay, so obviously, folks, I'm referring to a Gulf II class submarine that had a nuclear missile that reportedly was being fired. It was 300 miles north of Hawaii. It was a Russian sub. A nuclear missile reportedly being fired at Hawaii. The missile itself blew up the tube. All hands were lost. Now, this was the same time the USS Scorpion went down, and of course, this is during the height of the Cold War. And the situation was this, according to, as I understand it, and I explained this the other night on the air, except I made a mistake. The situation is this. The Russians were going to fire this nuclear missile, blame it on the Chinese, of course, and then have Russia, or have the Chinese and the Americans duke it out, and Russia would come in and pick up what was left. In a nutshell, of course, we would have been a victim of a Russian false flag. Do you see anything today that mirrors? This is not going to break your secrecy oath. Do you see anything that mirrors that today with the events of today?
Well, yeah, we're being moved along to believe things that are not true. Mr. Obama is one of the best disinformation guys that I've ever seen. The people writing his stuff are amazing. They really are amazing, and they understand psychology, and they have no morals, mores, standards, no restraints. It's pedal to the metal. Always. And the fact that we have few people actually calling them on the lies is a major problem for America. It's almost unbelievable that this kind of thing could happen. Sweet reasonableness has been thrown out in the trash, sadly. But, I have to be careful where I go with stuff.
No, I fully understand that, and of course, bound by secrecy oaths, you've got to. But folks, you understand where I was headed with that, and of course, I'm not bound by anything. I was asking Jim about his thoughts on K129, the rogue element behind that, and there was a rogue element that would have made that attempt, or that was making that attempt, as it relates to our own nuclear issue. You've talked about our own nuclear issue, as well as how it affected our relations with China and allowed us to get them to open up as they realized they were almost a victim of a Russian false flag. I mean, that's kind of where I was headed with that. But anyway, wow. But you've been a very gracious guest, Mr. Garrow. Thank you so much for your time. We're up against it.
Always a pleasure, and great information, Mr. Garrow. It's always fascinating to have you on, and we'd hope to do it again soon.
Guys, you're always a blast. Thank you. And praise God that you're doing what you're doing. God bless America.
God bless you, sir. God bless America. God bless Canada as well. Thank you, sir. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this, the 4th day of August 2014. If you so choose to believe it, it's Obama's date of birth. Yeah, I'll prove it. We're going to be right back after
Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this Monday, August 4th, 2014 edition. We're going to be hitting some news and taking your calls this hour. So if you want to chime in, give us a call at 661-244-9839. That's 661-244-9839. I'm going to hand it over to my dad. He's got some Benghazi news he wants to start off with, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, folks, and thanks, Joe. One thing that really bothered me was an article in the San Francisco Examiner, I believe it was. I've got to double check. Or San Francisco newspaper. In fact, it was online, sfgate.com. That's fsgate.com. The headline was, House Panel, No Administration Wrongdoing in Benghazi Attack. Well, right away, now this was published last Friday, August 1st. Right away, you had people in a bipartisan manner take this and just run with this and saying, see, look, there's nothing there to Benghazi. The article goes into the House Intelligence Committee, which is admittedly led by Republicans, has concluded that there was no deliberate wrongdoing by Obama in the 2012 attack on the consulate in Benghazi, Libya, that killed Stevens and 3 others. Now, that's what the article says. Now, you might look at that and say, okay. Well, in fact, the panel voted on the July 31st, the day before, to declassify the report. Now, this is reportedly the result of a 2-year investigation by the committee. U.S. intelligence agencies have to approve them signing or sign off on making the report public or declassified. Now, the chairman of the House committee here, Representative Mike Thompson, said that the report confirms that, and I'm quoting this now, that no one was deliberately misled, no military assets were withheld, and no stand-down order to U.S. forces was given. Now, folks, that's this House Intelligence Committee. Obviously, this conflicts with everything we've said here on this program. This conflicts with accusations of wrongdoing voiced by people like Darrell Issa and Trey Gowdy and others, okay? So what's up with this? And immediately I thought, wait a minute, the committee didn't even get started yet. This was, imagine this. Imagine the House, what this was the House Intelligence Committee merely going over, and this is what really threw me. I mean, took me totally off my feet until I got researched this. All the House Intelligence Committee did was read the previous reports of investigation and relied upon their findings. I hope you heard what I just said there. All the House Intelligence Committee did was read the previous investigative reports and relied upon their findings. That's all they did. So based on that, they said, hey, well, it's no wrongdoing. Well, there's no surprise there, folks. Obviously, there is absolutely no surprise there. Now, according to this House Intelligence Committee, intelligence agencies were, quote, and I'm quoting this now, were warned about an increased threat environment but did not have specific tactical warning of an attack before it happened. Okay. Well, as I said before, any reference to diplomatic security, which this is an end around to that, any reference to diplomatic security or the state of diplomatic security is a ruse. It's not to be believed. It's a red herring. It's taking your eyes off what's really important. They also stated there was no stand-down order given to the American personnel attempting to offer assistance that evening. No illegal activity or illegal arms transfers were occurring by U.S. personnel in Benghazi, and no American was left behind. Well, that's a convoluted and mixed statement. Let's deal with the first part of that. There was no, let me look here. There was no illegal activity or illegal arms transfers occurring by U.S. personnel in Benghazi. Okay. The hundreds of tons of arms and weapons that were leaving on a weekly basis, if not daily, if not weekly basis, out of northern Africa, Libya specifically. What about that? Under various flag ships. In one, there was tons and tons and tons and tons. One ship alone, there were tons. Obviously, the U.S. Department of State ARB report does not get into that, nor does the House Armed Services Committee report get into that, nor did the Senate Intelligence Committee get into that. So all the House Intelligence Committee is saying is, well, we didn't find any evidence based on the reports we looked at. So please, folks, if someone comes to you, and this is so important, again, if your obnoxious brother-in-law, Obama supporter, or your obnoxious brother-in-law, know-it-all, everything, is sitting across from you at a family reunion this coming Saturday and says, hey, did you see that? You can tell them, well, wait a minute. What you just heard there is merely based on a compendium of other reports. They did none of their, they called no witnesses. They did not do any of their investigation. They merely paged through, thumbed through a listing of other people's reports. Now, what this report also did, based on this statement of everything is fine, let's move along, what happened from this is now people are saying, well, wait a minute. The Benghazi Select Committee that consists of 7 Republicans and 5 Democrats, led by Trey Gowdy, which hasn't convened yet. It's going to convene perhaps in September. This is the committee now that Jim Garrow was talking about. But this is the committee, the investigative body that's got the power, that's got the weight, that's got the investigative abilities. This is the committee, this bipartisan committee that's got the ability to get to the truth, led by Trey Gowdy. There's 12 people on this Benghazi Select Committee. Trey Gowdy is the leader. There's 7 Republicans and 5 Democrats. On the Republican side, again, I'm mentioning the party's affiliations only so you have a clear picture in your mind as to who these people are. On the Republican side, you've got Susan Brooks. She's a member of the Homeland Security Committee, the sole Republican freshman on the committee. She was a former federal prosecutor, much like Gowdy. You've got Jim Jordan. You've got Mike Pompeo. He's a former Army officer who graduated first in his class at West Point. He's in his second term and on the Intelligence Committee. You also have Martha Roby. You also have Peter Roskin. He's on the Ways and Means Committee, by the way, majority with Kevin McCarthy's top lieutenant. Finally, wrapping up the Republicans, you've got Lynn Westmoreland. Now, he is from the South. He's in his 5th term. He was on the Intelligence Committee, or is on the Intelligence Committee. He headed the Benghazi Working Group, which is just an informal group that preceded the Select Committee. Okay, those are your 7 Republicans. On the Democratic side, of course, you've got the well-known Elijah Cummings, who's serving a ninth term. He is the head of the Oversight and Government Reform. He's very much an Obama trustee. You've got first-term Democrat Tammy Duckworth. By the way, she's the only combat veteran on the panel. She's a double amputee after being severely wounded in action during the Iraq War. You also have Adam Schiff, former federal prosecutor. And finally, wrapping up number 5 here on the Democratic side, you've got Adam Smith. He's the top Democrat on the Armed Services Committee. I find it interesting that the panel, this Benghazi Select Committee, many of the same people are members of the Intelligence Committee. So Gowdy's got his work cut out for him. The truth has its work cut out for it. And, of course, people are screaming bloody murder right now because the cost for the committee, this panel, this Benghazi Select Committee, is $3.3 million. 2.2, and it's divided by, it's prorated, Democrat versus Republican, Republican versus Democrat. So you've got $2.2 million for the staff and principals on the Republican side, and a little over $1 million for the Democratic side. But you got people saying, well, wait a minute. The Veterans Affairs Office, they only have a budget of $2 million. So this actually exceeds, this Benghazi committee actually exceeds the entire budget of the Veterans Affairs Council. But folks, if you think about this for a moment, and I acknowledge that, that's a lot of money for the staff and for travel, and a lot of this is going to be used to bring witnesses in and so on. If you look at this, much like Watergate was back in the 70s, the numbers are, and I did a little bit of the numbers going through what the cost of that investigation and that whole process there. This select committee is far less than what was spent for Watergate in current dollars, just so you know that. But the fact is this. If you hear someone say, well, wait a minute, we just had this House panel, Republican-led House panel, saying that there was nothing, Benghazi, nothing there. And you know, they were Republicans. Well, what that was all about was merely them reading and thumbing through and basing their statement on reading other reports. That's all that was. There was no independent investigation, and people are making it and saying, well, this proves that there was no wrongdoing. It proves nothing of the sort. It proves that these people can read. Maybe. So that's what I want to get into there. Benghazi, by the way, folks, is definitely perhaps the most important crime, as it has really, when you look at it, what has it done to the Middle East, or how what you know? Look, they tried. The Obama people tried to get us into a war in Syria, and they're still trying. But that's the importance of it. That's the major importance of it. World War III was almost started by these people, the Obama people, and Obama and the people that are he's doing his bidding for, as Jim said, the Saudis. This is a Saudi agenda. So this is why it's so important.
All right. Moving on to calls. Let's go to the phones. We have callers lined up. We can touch on anything you guys want to hit on, anything we talked about today. We're going to go to 760 area code first. That's 760. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. What's on your mind tonight?
Hey, Joe. Thanks for taking my call tonight. I really enjoyed Jim Garrow. I just have something to throw into the Garrow mix there when he was talking about the mall shootings. This year, on September 1st, is the 10-year anniversary of the Beslan school shooting in Russia. And if you start looking and going kind of along with what Christine Lagarde was talking about, the year of sevens, and you start looking into this, what you see is that this happened on September 1st, lasted the 1st through the 4th. The attackers arrived at 9:11 a.m. There were 1,100 captured, and 777 of them were children. They were held for 52 hours. 34 were killed. And then you go into, I could go on and on with all your, I'm not a numerologist, but going on with what Lagarde brought up, I mean, this is something to think about, too, because I can't see these guys just sticking with malls. I'm not with school coming into session here in the U.S. in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
That's a good point that you brought up. Interesting numbers associated with this. You know, to me, the signature, and people might find this, people, you know, when we talk about this, there are some people who get it and some people who don't. Some people who say, well, you're a kook, and other people who say, well, maybe there is something to this.
But you know, the reason why I bring it up is last year in the city that I live in, because there's only really 1 or 2 school resource officers, where at a mall you're going to have generally outside police department, a small depot there. But at one of our elementary schools here in the state of southern Utah, there were a couple of Arab men that came up and started asking questions, and they tracked them down to one of the elementary schools, and these men were from the Los Angeles region. And it's my understanding that when they were picked up, they picked them up at a mosque the next day down in Los Angeles, California. So it's interesting to me that that these guys are also, you know, Jim brought up the fact that they're at malls and they've got facial recognition in, they're paying attention to this stuff. But these guys are also looking at schools, because we go back to the playbooks that were found over in the Middle East. I believe it was the Marine Corps that found them, but it really doesn't matter who. They were looking at taking school buses in small, you know, towns in the middle of the United States, and also schools. I don't know if you guys recall that or not, but it was probably on one of your shows.
Yes.
Yeah, so I just don't want people to think it's only malls. Let's start looking at our schools. With school coming back into session, you know, pay attention to what's going on around there, too. Don't just drop your kids and take off. They take a school. If they took malls and schools at the same time, could you just imagine the amount of chaos that they could cause? And maybe, since W is always on, you know, you could talk to him more about this, because I mean, I don't want to take up your, you know, all your time you have for your other callers.
Not a problem at all. I think of it this way too. There's a better chance of somebody being armed at a mall and being able to fight back, as perhaps as outgunned as that person might be, you know, with a concealed carry permit, depending on which state they're in. Right. Then you're not going to find that at schools. And we know that, in fact, we know a lot of these imams and these Muslim terrorists have said they're going to kill our children. They're going to strike against the children. I worked with, I did some work with Dr. Paul Williams, who wrote the book. Oh my goodness, I was, in fact, was in one of the chapters. The name escapes me. A senior moment here. The name of the book escapes me. But no, we had talked. In fact, we had videotape or photographic evidence of school buses or one school bus anyway, at one of these Islamic training camps, as I'll describe it. The Day of Islam, thank you. Okay, is the name of the book, where I'm featured in my investigations featured in. But you're right. I think that vulnerability here, especially considering Beslan, is the schools. I think you're absolutely correct.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for taking my call tonight, guys. I've enjoyed your show. Doug, Jill, thank you.
Thank you. Great call, and call back again. God bless you.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right, we're going to move right along here. We're going to go to area code 865 next. 865, you're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. 865?
You said 856 first.
856? Well, either they dropped off. Call back and I'll get you back on the phone. We're going to go to area code 540. 540. You're up next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. 540.
We can hear you. We can hear in the background. All right. When you hear your area code called
562. 562 is the lucky numbers for tonight. 562. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
That Powerball number is? Oh, my goodness.
All right, we're going to try this one more time. 805. 805. The ball is in your court. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hello. Hi. I was just wondering about, did you hear that report from Gordon Duff about Israel, that they were behind 9/11?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think that Mr. Duff is entitled to his opinion. That's all I'll say about that. I don't believe for a moment that Israel is...
I'll take it this far. I'll say there's fractions of our government that were rogue in 9/11. There could have been parts of the Israeli government, the Saudi government, that were involved in that. We'll never know the full truth until the Lord returns, I do believe. But I don't believe main elements of their government were involved, not like ours at least.
Well, you think we're more behind it than Israel. Is that what you're saying, Joe?
Yeah, our leadership, whether Israel's government was involved in the planning behind the scene, and it didn't come out as blatantly as the U.S. involvement was, I'm not sure. But from what I can tell, the U.S. government was behind it. We had the information on bin Laden.
Wait. Criminal elements within the government, I think is what you mean. Okay? All right.
Yeah. In the government and from the government. Yes.
Well, what do you think about veterans today as a whole? Because I know there are some guys that are on there that you have had, like Mike Karras, and other writers for VT. Do you think that's a good site?
Personally, I don't know enough about it to state my opinion on that. So I would keep reading other information that's sourced and people who have a better idea about that site.
Well, I mean, it's not the only source I've heard that. I mean, I've heard that a long time ago. But I just wonder what your take was. That's about it.
Here, if I can answer it this way, with any site, and I would urge everyone to do this, even with information we put out. For example, having Jim Garrow on, or if we have John Smith on, or W, or V, or X, Y, Z, it doesn't matter who we have
or
on.
Obama.
Okay, well, yeah, that'd be the day. But here's what we all need to do. We all need to know that we are being gamed a lot of the time. In other words, people are putting out information. When I say people, I'm talking about the actors behind, the perpetrators behind a lot of these perpetrators who want to see us stumble, fall, trip over ourselves, be made to look like loons, embarrassed, whatever you want to call it. But I know that there's deliberate misinformation being put out there. And it's easy to fall for disinformation, very easy. So we have to be very careful with the information that we do provide. Can we vet it all? Absolutely not. Are we going to be wrong? Sure. But we have a responsibility to do what we can to bring you the best information, the highest vetted information. And having said that, whether it's Veterans Today or ABC News or Fox News or MSN, it doesn't matter what source. Let's use the same across the board, so we're not, at least we're consistent, and we don't get caught up in the disinformation that's out there that'll embarrass us and hurt our cause.
Well, that's why I like about your show is that you're not afraid to say all you're looking for. Like I hope for all of us that we're all just looking for the truth, no matter where it lies. And like V and W, I take to heart pretty much what they say. And I think
I've had enough conversations. Yeah, I got to tell you, I've had enough conversations with both V and W that I would take whatever they said to the bank. And there are very few people I would do that with. There are certain people that said, hey, I'm in Miami right now, and it's July 4th, and there's a foot of snow on the ground. If they told me, if they told me that, I would have to believe them just based on their track record, okay, barring any type of, something, neurologically wrong with them. But what I'm saying to you is, you've got to, that's what the phrase known and trusted is. You've got to build up a series of known and trusted people. And unless we specifically endorse someone, and that's not very often, then we just take the information that they're providing it as information.
I understand that completely, and I really enjoy your show, and I'll let you get the next caller in.
Thank you. Good question. Great question, as a matter of fact.
Thanks for your call.
Sir. You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Have a great night.
And by the way, Joe, I just want to make it clear, Joe, to you, to the audience, that's not to disparage anybody at all. We have to be so very careful. I mean, I look at this as a responsibility, and when I lay my head down at night, I worry. I think about the responsibility that we can't afford to screw up. I mean, there are people who want us to screw up. And we can't afford to do that, or give you wrong information, or yell the sky is falling and the sky will fall on December 21st, 2012, and things are going to happen and it's going to be no. We can't do that. We cannot afford to do that. Now, if we had specific intelligence to that effect and we had it confirmed by multiple sources, sure, we'll put it out there and say, look, this is the information we got. These are the sources we got them from, and do with it what you will. But does that make sense, Joe?
Yes, it does.
Okay. I was just looking at a couple of things here that just came in. So, all right, good.
I want to hit a news article here before we go back to calls. The United Nations seeks to prosecute Israel for war crimes in global court after the United Nations was caught last month giving rockets found at a UN school in Gaza to the terrorist group Hamas on more than 3 occasions. Now the UN's top human rights bureaucrat accused Israel of perpetrating possible war crimes, among other actions, for refusing to share with Hamas its Iron Dome defense technology.
you know something. Hey, Joe, don't laugh, man. I got to tell you, I was driving. He's over here cracking up. I was listening to a show, another radio program, and they were laughing about this. But to me, this is the height of hubris. This is the height of hypocrisy, obviously.
I'm sorry. I read it once already, but when I read it the second time, just the thoughts going through my head. You won't share your technology with me. That's saving your lives from our rockets.
It's crazy, but it's not funny to me. I mean, it's really not. Maybe I don't have a sense of humor.
It's just, it's such a...
It's ridiculous.
Topsy-turvy, upside-down thing that it's just so crazy out there that it's funny to me.
You know what really got me is the talk show I was listening to. I just looked at the bodies of citizens that were killed, and I thought, how could anyone really make a joke about this? And but yeah, it's ridiculous to the point where if it wasn't true, it would be funny. You could not make this stuff up. So I didn't mean to slam you for laughing. Don't take it the wrong way. It was just because it is kind of twisted. Wow. You hit the button there.
I find it just, as you said, the hubris, the gall to even state these claims publicly by the UN after giving the rockets to Hamas. As somebody said once, quoted best on our show, the UN needs to be bulldozed into the ocean. and I stand by that statement.
and you know, there's a reason for the UN being built on the slaughterhouse, on the property of the slaughterhouse. I mean, think about the we have to ask Nathan Leal when he comes on about that. By the way, folks, our third hour guest had we had to, there was something that came up. He couldn't make it. And, of course, he'll be on with us on, I believe, Wednesday. But having said that, I think I don't know if you announced that before, Joe, or not, but I didn't want people to think that we misled them early on.
About
our third hour guest. Third hour guest.
Yeah,
Chuck Baldwin.
Sorry, guys. During the interview with Garrow, I was communicating with our go-between with Mr. Baldwin, and he wanted to come on at 9, which was we were not able to do that as Mr. Garrow was on for another hour. So instead of 1 hour tonight, we're going to have him for 90 minutes on Wednesday.
That's great, Chuck Baldwin. Folks, don't miss that interview. And I want to publicly thank Sheila Zielinski. Folks, if you didn't listen to last week's weekend report, or this past week's weekend report, definitely go back and listen to that. What a powerful interview. Joe, you did a fantastic job there. I was in the background monitoring.
Maybe.
No, you did some stuff. I was just in the background monitoring things, making sure that the broadcast flowed, and I had to rehook you guys back up once, but Sheila Zielinski, the Weekend Vigilante, is really a fantastic, just an asset. We're very proud to combine forces with her every weekend for the Weekend Report. So, Sheila, God bless you. Thank you, ma'am, for all that you do.
All right, let's move on to the phones. Yes, and thank you, Sheila. She does a fantastic job. 309 area code. We're coming to you next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hi, guys.
Good evening.
Hi, you can hear me. Okay, good. This is Rochelle in Illinois. I've called you before. It's been a while, but I was calling a couple of things about the Ebola virus. People should plan on making their own preparations as best as they can to handle any kind of epidemic. I mean, there's all these strange viruses going on. Like right now, I'm in the process. I'm getting ready to cut my oregano and make oil of oregano, and it is powerful, antiseptic, antiviral, antibacterial. 4 Thieves oil is another one people can use to help combat some of this stuff. Hello?
I think, I think you're right. I think the natural remedies are the best remedies, or at least in terms of prevention. Is that where you're pretty much headed?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to come up with something, and what you're going to do. I was listening to Rick Wiles today, and they touched on a little bit. He had Augustus Perez on, and they touched on a little bit. Anything they come up with in terms of a vaccine is going to contain the virus. It's going to contain live virus.
That's very true.
You're not going to want to do that.
I got to tell you, I talked to Augusto Perez off air I think it was last Thursday, and we talked about this very issue and that you're referencing. And he said, in his view, this was going to go very horrible in the long term. So you're exactly right.
Absolutely. So I just want people to, if they don't do it now and it arrives, and it is worse than what they are talking about here, our media. If you go look at some news outlets in Africa and see how the stories are coming about, it's much worse. So that tells you there's things that they're not wanting the public to know about it. And so, if it gets here, it's going to be too late to do anything. So I use like 4 Thieves oil with cinnamon. It's got cinnamon, lemon, clove, rosemary, and eucalyptus oil. That's what they used during the plague.
Okay, tell us that one more time, because I want to write that down. Tell it to me slowly.
Okay, I'm sorry. I use my own blend, but then you have to, this is so concentrated, you have to mix it. If you're going to apply it to your feet or your hands, you're going to have to mix it with like olive oil or something, but a carrier oil. But it's cinnamon bark oil, lemon oil, clove oil, rosemary oil. Rosemary is probably one of the most antiseptic, antiviral, antibacterial, and anti-infectious things you can use. The rosemary oil is awesome. And eucalyptus oil. And the eucalyptus will help especially with respiratory. Other ones that are very, very powerful are tea tree oil. Like I said, the oil of oregano is nice. If you just pick fresh oregano, cover it with olive oil, and let it steep in the sun, you have oil of oregano. And you just use it. You actually can add a teaspoon or two to your drinks or your food every day, and it will help boost your immune system, literally help boost your immune system. You can apply it directly to like a sinus infection. It helps with circulatory, respiratory system. It's awesome. Apple pectin is another one that people should definitely have on hand. Just go pick up the apples from underneath somebody's tree that they don't even want, and you can make your own apple pectin. It's what they use for radiation poisoning at Chernobyl, was apple pectin, and there's a couple of blue clay they used, a French clay they used too. But they're very powerful remedies. I happen to believe God gave us all the medicine we need here on Earth, and I don't need. Yep. And with the way the medical system is today, I've had my own terrible experiences with wanting to have my child over medicated, etc. I've learned through the years that natural is much, much better. Anytime you can do it naturally.
I totally agree with you. Now, do you happen to have a website that you offer this information, or is this just something
I do not have a website. I've learned a lot. I have a child that has autism. I've learned a lot over the last 10, 11 years myself, just kind of self-taught. I learned about herbs, natural herbs. I grow a bunch of my own, and Rosemary Gladstone, I believe is her name, is probably the most well-known author to learn about just growing herbs and using herbs as medicine. I use like Mountain Rose Herbs. They have a great website that's got a lot of information. doTERRA oils are another one that are really, really good essential oils. And they work. People think, well, it's natural, it can't work. I'm telling you, I've cured a lot of infections and sickness in my family and friends and extended family using natural remedies. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for this information. Go ahead.
They were saying about the schools. I mean, I don't know what it's going to take for people to realize your child is not safe in any way, shape, or form, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, in the public school system. They're not safe there.
You're right.
And so if this needs to be a wake-up call for any parent that is thinking about homeschooling or scared to start, just do it. Just do it. Homeschool your child. Have your child with you all the time. You know what they're learning. You know what their influences are. You can teach them the things they need to know and skip over all the junk that is just junk, and they're safe.
You know something, if I were a parent of a child today, a school-age child today, I would I would definitely homeschool my child, and I would recommend anyone to do that. Absolutely.
Yeah. I have 5 children, and it never occurred to me to homeschool until just a couple years ago, and so we do now, and we love it. My family's never been more thriving than they are. So.
How marvelous is that, and what a celebration! 5 children. God has blessed you well, and that's
yeah, nobody's been arrested yet, or I'm knocking on wood here. I do have a 21-year-old, so no, he's great. But
wow. Okay.
Yeah, they're great.
Well, that's fabulous.
They're thriving.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the herbal information as well, and the websites and the information about
absolutely.
About that.
And just one more thing, you mentioned Pastor Leal. Everybody out there could say some prayers for him and his family. They were hit pretty bad by a storm, and they don't have any power right now. So say prayers for them and all the intercessory Yeah.
I talked to Nathan today. He got his power back on this afternoon, but the neighbors and many people around him are still in very terrible situations. So, yes, please keep Nathan in your prayers and his neighbors and community.
Blessed information. Yeah. So it's pretty bad fun, I guess.
Yeah, and he's had it rough the past month, boy.
Well, I know a lot of people that are very righteous, upright people that are being attacked. So I just think all the watchmen need our prayers, and intercessors, they need our prayers. Really, really need our prayers.
Thank you. Yes, we do.
You guys are always in my prayers. Always.
Well, thank you so much.
We certainly
have a great night.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
All right. You know, Joe, I was debating about saying anything, and I'll just mention this. And no, I'm not going to do that. Go ahead, Joe.
What? Spit it out.
No, we're going through something here, and I just want people to understand. You know, February 13th of 2013, we lost our Australian Shepherd. She was my surveillance partner. I mean, she was my canine surveillance partner, Holly. I wrote an article.
I'd get road sick more than she did. I'd get car sick more than she would.
Oh, yeah, she was a great dog, and she went everywhere with me. I mean, I used to take her, and in fact, when we used to drive to various places, we'd park alongside we'd pull into a truck stop, and she would sleep on the car seat, or on the seat next to me in the seat, and I'd sleep. And if somebody approached the car, she'd wake me up. And of course, she loved to sneak. If I had a cup of coffee and I turned away and it was cool enough, she'd love to sneak a sip or two of coffee. I mean, she was a person. She really was. And I wrote an article titled Goodbye to My Best Friend, and you can read it on HomelandSecurityUS.com. You have to search for it, but it's on there. Just it's on there. But in Christmas of 2004, our family was blessed with we rescued a purebred German Shepherd named King, and he has been part of our family. In fact, he's the iconic symbol to the Hagmann and Hagmann report.
He's the face on the bumper stickers for the outline, the face of our logo for the podcast, for the icon and the BTR show player.
Yeah, exactly. And he also has, up until last week, he was also a studio dog. He'd come down to the studio and with us when we were here and spend some time with us. But it was I think a week and a half ago. I was on a Thursday when I was home and with my wife. I was just going to come to the studio and just normally what we usually do is we usually take a walk before the show. And I thought he had a stroke. Well, we took him to the vet. Now he's almost 10 years old, or 10 years old, I guess, or going almost 10 years old. We rushed him to the vet, and they did an assortment of tests. And they found that King has advanced metastatic cancer throughout his body.
As well as pneumonia.
Well, he had pneumonia, and the cancer was in his lungs, and he had pneumonia. He was treated with strong antibiotics, and so for the past week and a half, he's been. They gave him a week and a half to live, 2 weeks to live, and we brought him home, and we've been together, making sure that he's comfortable. He was 140 pounds. He's probably down to 110 now, maybe.
I'll tell you this today, though. I took him for a walk, and we take him across the street to the field, and we used to throw the baseballs around, and he'd run and chase them. And today was the first day I actually tossed the baseball just underhanded, and he kind of ran after it, which was a good sign because he didn't get up for a few days there last week. Just laid there, with labored breathing. It looked pretty grim. He seems to be doing better today, but we know that he is sick, and it is not going to be long, but our prayers are continuing.
Yeah, I didn't want to mention anything, but it just seems like I was talking with Chance from American Survival Wholesale, and their dog had passed away from cancer, and they know of like 5 other, a total of five canines with who have suffered from cancer, and you just have to wonder: is it what's being sprayed? Is it the water? Is it the combination of everything? And I got to tell you, you talk about people who really have taken care of their animals with diets, special diets, raw food diets, and so on. I mean, you're talking about people who have done everything. But I just wanted to get that off my chest. It's been bothering me, and of course, the nights he doesn't sleep through the night. I'll get up with him, and I've been him and I, we've been kind of bunking together, if you will. My dog, that is, and I. So, thanks for your prayers. But I'll tell you what, it just seems like it's been a rough year all around for a lot of people. So we know what you're going through. If you're going through, ladies and gentlemen, if you're going through some rough patches, we understand because we go through them too. So just thanks for letting me get that off my chest.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure when you were going to bring that up because it's been a while and just didn't know. But it's been tough, seeing him every day. As we say, though, he will live on as he is the face of the Hagmann and Hagmann report. Haven't had a better dog, a smarter dog in my life, but he's still hanging in there. So keep those prayers coming. You never know what can happen. We got about 10 minutes left. We're going to go to the phones. Area code 615. We're going to come to you now. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann report. What's on your mind tonight?
Hi, this is Vicki, and I just want to give my sympathies about your dog. I totally understand. I don't know what I would do without my favorite pet. My cat is just my baby, and I understand.
They're like people, huh?
They really are. And they each one has their own personality, and you become so attached. So I really feel sorry for you and your sympathy.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. And I just want to thank both you and Joe for so much for what you do every night, informing us and keeping us informed. And you are like family because there's so many family members and friends that we're just, and coworkers that you want to wake up so badly, and it's just impossible. They just look at you like you're crazy and start to avoid the subject. So it's nice to be able to talk to somebody about it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I have a couple of things, actually, that I had written down for the last couple of nights, but I hadn't been able to get through, that have been on my mind from the last couple of shows. I tried to look it up, but I couldn't find it. Do you remember on Steve Quayle, one of his messages, or his headlines, was about Obama selling a body of water to China? I don't remember, like the Great Lakes or water from somewhere. Do you remember? Okay, what? I don't understand why that has not been brought up by anybody, and anybody else in power or anybody. Now with all the drought, and they're talking about evacuating people from California, and now this other terrible thing that's happened with the water. We need that water. And what who gave him permission to sell it?
I think what you're talking about has to do with Alaskan regions, up off Alaska and some islands and water up there. There was this Jesse Ventura show he did about Nestle buying the Great Lakes and shipping water to China. He has the authority to sell or get rid of any of our water, yet he has no authority to do many things he does and continues to do so. I would just pray for, the water to rain down on the country in the areas that are affected by the drought, and that the Lord will replenish our water supplies no matter how many times they're sold over again or who tries to take them. But, caller, we're going to let you go and trying to fit in one more call for the night. God bless you. Thank you so much for your call. We're going to go to area code 630. 630. You're up next. You'll be our last caller for the evening. What's on your mind tonight?
Hi. I just wanted to let you, you probably know already, Senate's on vacation for 5 weeks. And I don't know if the House is or if President Obama is, but it seems like a good time for things to happen when everybody is gone. And Sean Hannity 2 nights ago, he had a specialist on about the Ebola virus, and he downplayed it and pretty much inferred it all got spread because of unhygiene of Africans. So I just kind of wanted to offer that. And thanks, guys. God bless you.
Thank you. And you made some good points there. I did catch that clip. Joe, did you hear that on Sean Hannity? That when they were talking about Ebola and about how they downplayed?
No, I only heard about it. Yeah, and did not hear that.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just saying it was about 2 days ago. I'm finished.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, guys.
Okay. Thank you for the call. Go ahead, and I'm getting the echo with my headset there. They look. I don't know exactly what we're facing here, except to say that I do believe. Joe, can you? Oh,
yeah. We talked about on Dave Hodges last night. We talked about this, especially toward the end of the show. You know, is this Ebola? You know, we've seen the H1N1 scare, the MERS scare, the scares of these pandemics that are going viral, going to be contagion outbreaks that amount to very minimal conditions in the bigger scheme of things when we look at what we're seeing with the rhetoric thrown around about the Ebola virus now. Could this be a real threat that does kill millions or if not billions of people? Possibly. Could it be a pretext to be able to start some form of martial law conditioning to stop people and forcibly vaccinate them, against their will? Possibly. Could it be a hype up just to see the reaction, how people react to a martial law type scenario or to the news of a martial law type scenario? Possibly. There's no limit of possibilities when it comes to the Satanists and their agendas and what they really want out of the problem that they've created.
All I can say is this: the fact that we have to have this discussion, the fact that we have to look at our government and say, who's telling the truth? Are they telling the truth? Is anyone telling the truth? That to me represents a larger problem than perhaps the problem itself. I think that, obviously Ebola is a problem, tuberculosis, any type of antibiotic-resistant bacteria or virus, whatever, is going to be an extremely huge problem. But that be lied about the extent of the issue, or to have criminal elements within our government facilitate the spread for whatever reason, even as a beta test, or name the reason. To me, to have this discussion, is just incredible. Decent people aren't supposed to be talking about stuff like this. We shouldn't. This is stuff of nightmares, of crime movies, of horror movies. I don't know. I just find it very, very odd that we're in this position at this moment. And I question everything. I question motivation. I question principles. Who's involved? I do wonder if we're overstating the extent of the threat, or if we're understating the extent of the threat. You just have to look at this, or if we're being diverted from another issue, perhaps the southern border, which is just open porous, and we've got other strains of diseases coming in, and look, we're just in a world of hurt right now in terms of our headlines. We've got to understand. We almost have to do news triage, don't we? We've got to look at the headlines and decide. All right,
that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
where should we focus? Where should we put our focus? Or is it something that's totally off the radar?
No, the news triage is a good phrase for it. Folks, with that, we're up against the top of the hour, meaning we're at the end of the show. Tomorrow, Stan Dale, back from the Prophecy in the News Conference with his presentation on the Garden of Eden and Solomon's Treasure. We're going to be talking with Stan for 2 hours tomorrow, and he's going to go over as much of this information as we can get out of him without having to waterboard him. And it's going to be a fantastic show. You're not going to want to miss it. 8 p.m. here we start. Stan will join us at 9, and he'll be on until 11. Until then, stay safe. God bless. Have a great night, everyone. We'll see you back here tomorrow.